Okay, so don't get me wrong. Learning Japanese might seem really overwhelming at first, but once you've understood how to structure your learning and what methods are the best to use, it might actually be a lot easier than you think. The key is to focus on building up your conversation and your writing skills, step by step. Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new video on this channel. First, let me start off by actually introducing my own background. Okay, so other than you might have guessed, I do not actually have any Japanese roots myself, okay? I'm actually half German and half Chinese, but nevertheless, Japan still plays a very important role in my life, as I have been there myself for 3 months during my time as an exchange student. And yeah, I also had to study Japanese from zero, just like you guys, so that puts me in a good position to give you some tips about how you should study Japanese. Because, I have literally been through the same path as you are in right now. And that is why you should watch this video. At the beginning, learning Japanese might seem pretty tough because, there are going to be so many things that are difficult and complicated to learn, but once you've actually started with the process, and you'll gain a sense on how to structure your studying in the best way possible and what methods to use, learning Japanese will gradually become easier. And when you look back at all the progress you've made in the future, you'll see learning Japanese in a completely different way. Let's start by talking about how the Japanese language is built up in the first place. In Japanese, there are 3 main writing systems: Hiragana, Katakana, and Kanji, which are the characters that are copied from the Chinese language. If you are just starting out on learning Japanese, one of the first things you should do is learn Hiragana and Katakana. From my own experience, I would say it takes about 1 week to study each of them. You might be wondering why there were 2 alphabets with 46 syllables each that are both pronounced the exact same way. Essentially, Katakana is being used to spell out foreign words, while Hiragana is being used to write down almost anything else. Certain words can also be written in Kanji instead of Hiragana, which are the characters that are copied from the Chinese language. But the first thing you should focus on is studying Hiragana and Katakana. After you have mastered those 2 alphabets, you can also start to adapt simple kanjis into your vocabulary. But please don't get stressed out on studying kanji too much, okay? Studying kanji doesn't mean that you have to study absolutely every kanji you come across, okay? Just start by studying the more simple ones you see, alongside with your vocabulary. Now, the second advice I can give you is, don't study Japanese in Romaji, which is basically just using our Latin alphabet to spell out Japanese words. The problem with Romaji is that it cannot really represent a lot of the pronunciation of the Japanese syllables and how the Japanese language really sounds like. And therefore, your pronunciation will just be really far off from what it's actually supposed to sound like. Also, when you travel to Japan, you also want to be able to read and write in Japanese. For example, when you're trying to read signs and ask for directions, and it's just going to be more helpful in general, okay? Trust me. A quick break to tell you that only 0.3% of you guys watching this video are actually subscribed. It might seem so simple to you, but it would really help me out a ton if you could click that subscribe button down below. It's free and it only takes a second. With that said, let's move on with the video. So in Japanese, sentences are made up of a combination of Hiragana, Katakana, and Kanji. Now let's talk about how I have been studying Japanese. Before I went to Japan, I had basically attended Japanese language school for around 10 months alongside with textbooks to study. But the way I had been memorizing things was just kind of complicated, because I was just learning everything by heart. Every time there was new vocabulary and kanji I had to study, or even new grammar, I just wrote it down over and over again in order to remember it. Like I was literally writing pages full of kanji like this. But there is actually a much easier way that can help you study more kanji in less time with less effort. And that brings us to the sponsor of today's video, mochikanji. Thank you so much for making this video possible. Mochikanji is an app that can make learning Japanese fun, with different interactive lessons to teach you the Japanese language step by step with. No matter if you're just starting out learning Japanese, or you're an advanced learner, mochikanji has got you covered, with kanji and vocabulary reaching from JLPT N5 to JLPT N2, and lessons that are based on some of the most popular textbooks, such as Minna no Nihongo or Genki. You can easily select where you're at, and the corresponding lessons will be provided to you. Especially when learning kanji, this can make your life so much easier. You know, as I can also tell you from my own experience, studying with a textbook can be so boring sometimes. But mochikanji's lessons are made up of images, sentences with accurate pronunciation, real-life examples, and even flashcards for kanjis and vocabulary. The second advantage when using mochikanji to learn Japanese is what is called spaced repetition. Let me briefly introduce it to you. Spaced repetition is the method of transferring the knowledge we've learned into our long-term memory by creating appropriate intervals between our review sessions. Mochikanji applies this scientific method and its special algorithm to generate the golden time, which is one of my favorite features. They will basically send a reminder to your phone at the right time, the time where you're almost about to forget things, so that you can do a short reviewing session. And by reviewing what you want to learn in that pattern, you can signalize your brain that this is something very important you shouldn't forget, and therefore you are going to be able to remember that thing more easily, and that is also scientifically proven. Studying like this can also save you a lot of time, because it is enough just to study a few minutes a day. In the mochikanji app, there also is a countdown timer that shows you exactly how many hours or minutes are left, so you know exactly when to do what. Moreover, the lessons that mochikanji offers are pretty comprehensive, including reading, writing, and listening. Mochikanji will also categorize the vocabulary and kanji you're learning into 5 different levels, where level 1 are the words you've just started studying, and level 5 are the words you know fluently. You can check the level of your words inside your digital notebook. If you are a beginner and you're also planning a trip to Japan, I recommend you try the conversation feature of this app. In this interface, you can practice having daily conversations while speaking with the app, and there are also going to be detailed pronunciation corrections. Click the first link in the video description to download mochikanji. Otherwise, you can also find it in the App Store, Google Play Store, or online by typing mochikanji. Once again, thank you so much for sponsoring today's video. If you want to master Japanese grammar perfectly, you're going to have to forget everything you know about English grammar so far. Like seriously, they differ dramatically, so even I make mistakes sometimes there. But what I recommend you do is to just think of some sort of example sentence, and then, whenever you're speaking Japanese, just think of that samples, so you can recall the meaning of the grammar and how to create a sentence. One of the easiest ways I was able to study Japanese pronunciation with was by watching animes. So when you watch animes, you hear the characters speaking Japanese all the time, so you can just like passively learn how certain words and combinations of syllables are pronounced. The less fictional the story of the anime you're watching is, the more likely it is that what the anime characters are saying is actually what you can also say in real life, because you know there are some animes that have like fighting scenes or something, and those animes feature like completely unrealistic vocabulary a lot of the time. So, the more realistic a situation portrayed by the anime is, the more likely it is that those words spoken can actually be used in real Japanese. Another thing I recommend is to just watch all kind of Japanese shows and movies, and also listen to Japanese music to get immersed into the Japanese language as much as possible. Like, I really love listening to Japanese music. I still do that all the time. Of course, when studying Japanese, you should not only focus on input, but also try to output things yourself, because otherwise, while you are okay with understanding a lot of Japanese things, you might have trouble with the speaking itself. So that's why I recommend that when you're in Japan, to just talk to some strangers, like for example at a convenience store, when you're like paying the cashier, or just asking for directions. Just try talking to strangers that way, even if your Japanese isn't that good yet, because, trust me, Japanese people can be really kind, and they're going to do their best to understand everything you say. The next thing for you to do is to simply continue learning Japanese, and this is the easiest yet hardest thing at the same time. Because if you study just once a week, you are mostly going to forget what you've studied in the previous session. It is really important to remember that constant learning is crucial. If you don't keep it up, learning Japanese is pointless. This is not a lie. So when you're studying Japanese, please promise me that it's going to be constant. If you seriously want to speak Japanese. If it is really impossible, even just 15 minutes a day are fine. But please make an effort to study Japanese every day. Studying Japanese is just like an entire journey. And yeah, it's going to take some time, but at the end, it's going to be worth it. So yeah, I hope this video helped you. Thank you again so much to Mochi for sponsoring this video. And with that being said, bye bye.